Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be focusing on something that I think is always top of mind for a lot of people, and that's our health and how to improve our overall well-being.
Absolutely.
So we're diving deep into a blog post from ZooJX Yogi, and they lay out 9 ways to improve our health both physically and mentally. And I think what's interesting is that we all know there's tons of advice out there about how to be healthier.
So much advice.
So much.
Yeah.
So how do we sort of sift through that and find what's really valuable? So that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the ZOJX Yoj blog goes a little bit beyond just saying, like, do this and do that, but also really digs into the why behind each suggestion.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important to help these changes stick.
Absolutely.
Rather than just jumping on the latest health fad.
Right. It's about understanding the how and the why, not just following a list blindly. So let's start with something I think that's pretty fundamental, and that's hydration. The blog stresses drinking plenty of water and even suggests starting the day with lemon water. Is there any science behind that lemon water boost, or is it just a refreshing habit?
Well, I don't know that adding lemon to your water is going to give you, like, magical properties or anything.
Yeah.
But it can definitely make staying hydrated more appealing.
Yeah.
And hydration is truly the cornerstone of good health. I mean, think about it. It impacts everything from how well your joints move to your energy levels, even the health of your skin.
Right. It's like the foundation
Yeah.
upon which everything else is built.
Totally.
And speaking of foundations, ZooJX Yogi goes beyond the usual exercises good for you and gets specific about the power of strength training.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they really point out that the benefits go way beyond just building muscles.
Yeah.
Strength training can actually have a real impact on your blood pressure. It helps manage cholesterol levels and even strengthen your bones. It's amazing how all those systems are interconnected.
That's so interesting. And I thought it was interesting that they highlighted how strength training can help you with everyday activities.
Yeah.
They talk about carrying groceries, playing with your kids, all those things that you might take for granted.
Yeah, that's what we call functional fitness.
Okay.
And that maintaining strength as we age is really critical for independence and maintaining a high quality of life.
Absolutely.
It's not just about aesthetics. It's about being able to, like, fully live your life.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered hydration, we've covered strength training. Let's tackle something that I think we probably all struggle with at times, and that's healthy eating. The blog really addresses this misconception that healthy eating has to mean bland salads and deprivation.
Yeah. And thankfully so, because the amount of advice out there about nutrition is just overwhelming.
It really is.
It's no wonder that people get discouraged by it.
Ab-
I really appreciate that ZOJX Yoja emphasizes finding an approach that you can actually sustain rather than chasing the latest fad diets.
Yeah, it's got to be something you can live with.
Yeah.
Long term.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears to another crucial element, sleep. Let's be honest, how many of us are actually getting enough sleep?
Right.
I know I struggle with it sometimes. ZooJX Yogi emphasizes sleep as being so essential for both our physical and mental recovery.
They're spot on. And it all ties back to the body's internal clock.
Yeah.
That circadian rhythm that dictates our natural sleep-wake cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And when we kind of understand this rhythm, we can start to work with our bodies, not against them,
Yeah.
to establish healthy sleep habits.
Mm.
Even just briefly disrupting that rhythm can throw off your hormone levels, and that impacts your energy, your stress, all sorts of things.
Wow, speaking of things that we can do to work with our bodies, let's move on to stretching. What I like about this is that it's something that's accessible to pretty much anyone regardless of your fitness level.
Yeah.
And ZooJX Yogi points out that stretching has benefits that go way beyond flexibility.
Absolutely. Stretching can do wonders for circulation,
Wow.
improving your posture,
Really?
and even have a positive impact on your mood. And it's something that you can easily incorporate into your day,
Yeah.
whether it's at your desk watching TV or just taking a few minutes for yourself.
It's like a little mini self-care ritual you can sprinkle throughout your day.
Exactly.
And speaking of self-care, ZooJX Yoga brings up massage as one of their 9 tips. It's often seen as a luxury, but what's the science behind how massage can benefit our health?
Well, massage can actually significantly improve your circulation. It can reduce fatigue and even address pain. It's especially helpful for people who spend a lot of time sitting or standing, which, let's face it, is most of us.
That's a lot of us. Yeah. Now, shifting gears to maybe a more active form of self-care. Let's talk about walking. ZooJX Yoga recommends aiming for that classic 10,000 steps a day. Some people might find that daunting, especially those of us with really busy schedules. Is hitting that number really necessary?
You know, while 10,000 steps is a great target, the real key is to find what's realistic and sustainable for you. Even gradually increasing your daily steps can yield substantial benefits both physically and mentally.
Okay.
Walking is a fantastic way to reduce stress, boost cardiovascular health, and even get those creative juices flowing.
And the beauty of it is you don't need any fancy equipment or gym membership.
No?
Just lace up your shoes and go.
No.
Now let's discuss another activity that might not be for everyone, but ZOJX makes a strong case for it running.
Absolutely.
They talk about how it's so effective for burning calories, shedding fat, toning muscles, but the benefits extend beyond the physical. What about the mental health aspect? The blog refers to the hormones of happiness. What's the science behind that runner's high?
Well, running triggers the release of endorphins, those natural mood boosters, and they can create feelings of euphoria and reduce stress.
Wow.
It's like a natural antidepressant.
That's amazing. Okay, so for those of us who aren't quite ready to hit the pavement, the blog also highlights the importance of mindfulness for mental well-being.
Yes. And it's so important to include mindfulness alongside those physical activities. Mindfulness meditation can be a game changer when it comes to managing stress and improving focus, especially in our constantly connected, fast-paced world.
One thing I found interesting is the blog talks about not fighting with our thoughts during mindfulness practice. That sounds a little counterintuitive. How does that work in practice?
Well, it's about acknowledging those thoughts and feelings without judgment, simply observing them as they arise and pass.
Okay.
We're not trying to suppress them or get caught up in them. It takes practice, but the benefits for mental clarity and stress reduction are absolutely worth it. It's true. Focusing on just one small change can make a big difference. Speaking of small changes with big impact, let's circle back to strength training for a moment. ZOJX makes a point of highlighting how it can benefit bone health, which might surprise some people.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks associate strength training solely with muscle building, not necessarily with skeletal health.
Exactly. But strength training actually plays a key role in maintaining bone density, which is crucial for preventing osteoporosis and fractures as we age. It's like putting money in the bank for your future health.
So it's not just about building muscles, it's about building stronger bones, too. That's a great analogy. I'm curious, does the type of strength training matter when it comes to bone health?
That's a great question. Research suggests that weight-bearing exercises where you're working against gravity are particularly effective for stimulating bone growth. Think squats, lunges, push-ups, things like that. Even walking can be considered weight-bearing.
That's interesting. So those everyday activities that ZOJX mentioned, like carrying groceries or playing with your kids, can actually contribute to stronger bones. It's like sneaking in a workout without even realizing it.
Exactly. Every bit of movement counts.
Yeah.
And it's never too late to start incorporating strength training into your routine, no matter your age or fitness level.
That's encouraging to hear. Now, I want to go back to sleep for a minute. ZOJX mentions the concept of the body's internal clock or circadian rhythm. I have to admit, I'm a bit fuzzy on the practical implications of that for our sleep habits. Could you shed some light on that?
Of course, our circadian rhythm is basically our body's natural 24-hour cycle, regulating when we feel awake and when we feel sleepy. It's influenced by light exposure, which is why getting sunlight during the day and minimizing blue light from screens at night is so important.
I've heard about that blue light issue, but I've never fully understood why it messes with our sleep.
Well, blue light, the kind emitted from our phones and computers, actually suppresses the production of melatonin, a key hormone that helps regulate our sleep-wake cycle. So scrolling through social media before bed can actually trick your brain into thinking it's still daytime.
Wow, I never realized it was that direct of a connection. So what can we do to help our bodies produce more melatonin naturally?
Exposing yourself to sunlight during the day is a great start. It helps to reset your internal clock. And in the evening, dimming the lights, taking a warm bath, or reading a book instead of staring at your phone can all help signal to your body that it's time to wind down.
Okay, that makes sense. It's all about creating those calming nighttime rituals. Now let's shift gears to a topic I find personally intriguing, mindfulness meditation. I'll admit I've dabbled in it, but I'm still trying to grasp the concept of not fighting with our thoughts. It seems almost impossible in our busy, overthinking world.
It's definitely a skill that takes practice. But the idea behind mindfulness is not to empty your mind completely, but rather to become more aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment. It's about observing them as they arise, like clouds passing in the sky instead of getting swept away by them.
That's a beautiful analogy. So instead of trying to force those thoughts away, we're simply acknowledging their presence and letting them go.
Yes, exactly. It's about shifting from a mode of resistance to a mode of acceptance. And with practice, you can start to develop a greater sense of clarity and focus, even amidst the chaos of daily life.
Yeah.
Think of it as mental strength training.
I love that, mental strength training.
Yeah.
So is there a specific technique for practicing this non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts?
There are many different techniques, but one simple one is to focus on your breath. As you breathe in, notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils. As you breathe out, notice the sensation of the air leaving your body. Whenever your mind wanders gently, guide it back to your breath. It's like giving your mind a focal point, an anchor to come back to.
It sounds almost deceptively simple. I guess the challenge is in the consistency, making it a regular practice.
You got it. Consistency is key with any new habit,
Yeah,
especially one that involves training your mind. Even just 5 or 10 minutes a day can make a difference.
that's good to know. Okay, before we move on, I want to touch on something that might sound a bit indulgent in the context of a health discussion. Massage, ZOJX WOGA, includes it as one of their 9 tips, and I'm all for a bit of pampering, but I'm curious about the science behind it.
Massage is more than just pampering. It's a powerful tool for promoting physical and mental well-being. It works by manipulating the soft tissues of the body, improving circulation, releasing muscle tension, and reducing stress hormones.
So it's not just about feeling good in the moment, it's actually having a physiological impact on our body.
Absolutely. Studies have shown that massage can be effective for managing chronic pain conditions like back pain and headaches, reducing anxiety and depression symptoms, and even improving sleep quality.
That's impressive. I had no idea the benefits were so far-reaching. And ZOJ OJA specifically mentions its benefits for people who sit or stand for long periods, which is a lot of us these days. Do you have any thoughts on why it's so helpful for those folks in particular?
Well, when we sit or stand for extended periods, certain muscles can become chronically tight and shortened, while others become weakened. This can lead to poor posture pain and even decreased mobility. Massage helps to address these imbalances by releasing those tight muscles and improving flexibility.
It's like giving your body a much-needed reset. Now let's get back to some movement-based activities. ZOJ X Wajiba recommends aiming for 10,000 steps a day. But I've heard some arguments that this number is somewhat arbitrary and that the focus should be on overall activity levels rather than a specific step count. What's your take on that?
I think there's some validity to both perspectives. The 10,000 step goal is a great way to encourage people to move more, and it provides a tangible target to aim for. However, it's important to remember that it's just a guideline, not a hard and fast rule.
So it's more about using it as motivation to get moving, not getting hung up on the exact number.
Exactly. The key is to find a level of activity that feels challenging but sustainable for you, whether that's 7,000 steps, 12,000 steps, or something in between. And it's important to listen to your body and adjust accordingly.
That makes sense. So it's not just about hitting a certain number, it's about making movement a regular part of your life.
Right. And there are so many ways to incorporate more steps into your day, even if you don't have time for a dedicated workout. Take the stairs instead of the elevator walk during your lunch break, park farther away from your destination, or even just pace around your house while you're on the phone.
I love those practical tips. It's all about those little tweaks that can add up over time. And speaking of adding things up, let's talk about another activity that ZOGNX Wayoji promotes, running. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but they make a compelling case for its benefits.
Absolutely. Running is a highly efficient form of exercise, offering a multitude of physical and mental benefits. It's excellent for cardiovascular health, burns a ton of calories, and helps build strong bones and muscles. But it's the mental health aspect that I find particularly fascinating.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, you mentioned the runner's high earlier. That's a real phenomenon. Running triggers the release of endorphins, those natural mood boosters that can create feelings of euphoria and reduce stress. It's like a natural antidepressant.
I've definitely felt that mood lift after a good run. But what about people who find running intimidating or who have physical limitations? Is there a way to experience those same benefits through other forms of exercise?
Absolutely. Any form of cardiovascular exercise that gets your heart rate up can release endorphins and improve your mood. Walking, swimming, dancing, cycling, even jumping jacks. The key is to find an activity you enjoy and that you can do consistently.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between challenge and enjoyment. All right, before we move on, I want to revisit mindfulness for a moment. ZOJX Wayoji highlights its benefits for stress management and focus, which are much needed in our always-on world. But I have to admit, I struggle with quieting my mind. Do you have any advice for those of us who find it challenging to switch off the mental chatter?
It's a common struggle. Our minds are wired to constantly analyze, plan, and worry. But here's the thing. You don't have to silence your thoughts completely to experience the benefits of mindfulness. It's more about shifting your relationship with your thoughts, becoming an observer rather than a participant in the mental drama.
That's an interesting way to frame it. So how can we practically cultivate that observer mindset?
One technique I find helpful is labeling your thoughts. As thoughts arise, simply acknowledge them mentally. Say to yourself, thinking about work, thinking about dinner, thinking about that thing I said yesterday. By labeling them, you're creating a bit of distance between yourself and the thought, allowing you to observe it without getting swept away by it.
I'm going to try that. It sounds like a simple yet powerful way to gain more control over our mental chatter. And it ties back to what we discussed earlier about not fighting with our thoughts. It's about acknowledging their presence without letting them dictate our emotional state.
Exactly. It's about creating space between your thoughts and your reactions, which can be incredibly empowering. And as with any skill, mindfulness takes practice. Start with a few minutes each day and gradually increase the duration as you feel comfortable.
That's encouraging. Okay, I want to switch gears now and talk about something a little more tangible, hydration. ZOJXWAUG emphasizes the importance of drinking enough water throughout the day, but I've heard conflicting advice about how much water we really need. Some people swear by those 8 glasses a day, while others say it's a myth. What's your perspective on this?
The 8 glasses a day rule is a good starting point, but it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all recommendation.
Yeah.
Individual needs vary depending on factors like your activity level, climate, and overall health. A good rule of thumb is to listen to your body and drink when you feel thirsty.
So it's about paying attention to those internal cues rather than rigidly adhering to a specific number.
Precisely. And there are other ways to gauge your hydration levels besides thirst. Check the color of your urine. If it's pale yellow, you're likely well hydrated. If it's darker, you may need to increase your fluid intake.
That's a good tip. And ZOJXUJ specifically mentions lemon water as a way to kickstart your day. Is there any scientific basis for that recommendation, or is it more about making water more palatable?
Well, lemon water doesn't have magical properties. It can certainly enhance the taste of water, making it more appealing to drink. And lemons are a good source of vitamin C, an important antioxidant that supports immune health.
So it's a win-win. You get your hydration and a little vitamin boost.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those small, enjoyable rituals that make healthy habits more sustainable.
I completely agree. It's about finding those little things that make taking care of ourselves feel good, not like a chore.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from strength training and sleep hygiene to mindfulness and the importance of staying hydrated. I'm curious what stands out to you as the most significant takeaway from this ZOJX blog post. For me, it's the emphasis on a holistic approach to health, recognizing that our physical, mental, and emotional well-being are all interconnected. It's not about striving for perfection in any one area, but rather finding a balance that works for you across all aspects of your life.
I love that. It's about that integration of mind, body, and spirit. And ZOJX Yogi really drives home the point that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to health.
Absolutely. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about experimenting, exploring different options, and finding what resonates with you and fits into your lifestyle.
And they don't shy away from the fact that creating healthy habits takes effort and consistency. There's no magic bullet. It's about making small, sustainable changes over time.
Exactly. And it's about being kind to yourself along the way. Celebrate your successes, learn from your setbacks, and keep moving forward.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder. AJOJ, talks about self-care as an essential part of overall well-being. But in our busy world, it's often seen as a luxury, something to squeeze in if we have time. What are your thoughts on how our societal views of self-care impact our overall health?
That's a great question to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that's a good place to stop for now. We can pick up on this thread in part 3 of this deep dive.
Sounds good to me. Okay, welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about this whole idea of self-care and how it's often perceived in our society. And it's a great topic, I think, to unpack because, as J points out, self-care isn't selfish. It's actually essential.
Right. And the way we view self-care can have a huge impact on our overall well-being. It's so often seen as something extra.
Right.
Something we do only after we've taken care of everything and everyone else.
It's like it gets relegated to the bottom of the to-do list. You know, we prioritize work, family, social obligations, all these external demands before we even consider our own needs.
Exactly. And that can be a recipe for burnout and exhaustion.
Yeah.
When we're constantly putting ourselves last, we deplete our physical and emotional resources. And that makes it harder to function effectively in any area of our lives.
So it's almost like a domino effect. You know, neglecting self-care in one area can impact our well-being across the board.
Totally.
But I think there's also this fear that prioritizing self-care will make us seem selfish or indulgent.
Right. And that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Self-care isn't about being self-centered. It's about recognizing that we need to take care of ourselves in order to be the best versions of ourselves for everyone else.
Yeah, it's like that oxygen mask analogy on the airplane. You have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can assist others.
Exactly.
But in practice, it can be tough to shift those ingrained beliefs and make self-care a non-negotiable part of our lives.
Absolutely. It requires a conscious effort to reframe our thinking and to challenge those societal expectations that tell us we need to be constantly productive and available to others.
So where do we start? If someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I need to prioritize self-care, but I have no idea where to begin, what advice would you give them?
I would say start small and focus on what brings you joy and replenishes your energy. It doesn't have to be these grand gestures or elaborate rituals. You could be as simple as taking a few minutes each day to read a book, listen to music, take a walk in nature, or enjoy a cup of tea in silence.
Yeah, it's about finding those pockets of time to reconnect with yourself, even amidst a busy schedule.
Totally.
And it's about giving yourself permission to do those things without guilt or
Yeah.
feeling like you should be doing something else.
It's about recognizing that taking care of your own well-being is not a luxury. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
And when you start prioritizing self-care, you'll likely find that you have more energy and capacity to show up for others in a more meaningful way.
It's like filling up your own cup so you can pour from it without running dry. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into these 9 tips from Zoche Joe, I'm curious, of all the things that we've discussed today, what resonates with you the most?
You know, what strikes me is the emphasis on the interconnectedness of all these elements.
Right?
It's not just about focusing on one aspect of health in isolation. It's about recognizing how everything, our physical activity, our nutrition, our sleep, our stress levels, our social connections, all play a role in our overall well-being.
Right. It's that holistic perspective that really shines through. And I think Zoje Ojea does a great job of empowering us to take ownership of our health. Recognizing that we have choices we can make each day that support our well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they provide a framework, a roadmap, but ultimately it's up to each of us to navigate our own health journey.
And to find what works for us, because they make a point of saying that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And that's so important to remember.
It is. We all have different needs and preferences and lifestyles. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what resonates with you, what feels good and sustainable in the long run.
So it's about being curious, experimenting, and listening to our bodies.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into the world of health and wellness. We've explored a range of practical tips and insights from Zoje X Roja, covering everything from hydration and strength training to the importance of sleep mindfulness and self-care.
It's been a pleasure unpacking these strategies with you and delving into the science behind them. I hope our listeners feel inspired and empowered to take action and prioritize their well-being.
Me too. And remember, it's not about making drastic changes overnight. Start small, experiment, find what works for you, and be kind to yourself along the way.
And if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out for support. There are resources available, whether it's a healthcare professional, a therapist, a personal trainer, or a supportive friend or family member.
Absolutely. It's all about building that support system. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Zhu Jiax, Yujia, talks about health as a journey, not a destination. And as we navigate this journey, what are some ways we can cultivate a more compassionate and mindful approach to our own health and well-being, recognizing that it's an ongoing process, not a finish line to be crossed?
That's a powerful question to reflect on and a great note to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.